Hello, I'm Bridget Dalton, and me and my group created a test measuring satisfaction with online learning. So obviously in recent years, technology has advanced a lot, and along with the advancement in technology, online learning has become increasingly popular. During the pandemic, 93% of students were participating in online learning, which is way more than ever before. And this drastic increase in online learning raises a lot of questions about how effective online courses are in comparison to in-person courses and what type of courses students prefer. So that's sort of what led us to our topic, which is centered around whether or not students are satisfied with online learning as it is right now. So there has been a lot more research on this topic as the popularity of online courses has increased. And a lot of research shows that students require highly interactive courses that allow for creativity and collaboration, which can be difficult in online learning to create the same level of like interactiveness that you can get in an in-person course. But it's definitely capable of like achieving that. But it can be hard to measure student satisfaction with online learning when courses differ so much and the quality and quantity of interactions that students receive in different courses can vary significantly. So for the purpose of our study, we defined student satisfaction with online learning as a student's perceived success in online courses, as well as their preference of online courses or in-person courses. And our convergent variable for our study was readiness for e-learning, which is used to predict success in e-learning programs. So we hypothesized that our convergent variable would be correlated with satisfaction with online learning because they both relate to success in online learning programs. And our discriminant variable is happiness, which the Oxford Happiness Questionnaire defines as a measure of overall psychological well-being. And we hypothesized that happiness would have no relationship with satisfaction with online learning. For our method, we recruited participants on social media using Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and we mainly targeted college students. We had a total of 62 participants with ages ranging from 18 to 22, and 76% of our participants indicated that the race that they most identified with was white. And 63% of our participants were female and 37% were male. For our procedure, like I said, we recruited participants mainly on social media where participants could click an anonymous link to access our survey through Qualtrics. And the survey begins with an informed consent where participants can decide whether or not they want to be a part of the study or not. And if a participant consents, then they will be presented with our test, and then the convergent test, and then the discriminant test, followed by 3 demographic questions about age, sex, and race. And then finally, our test ends with a debriefing statement. So for the materials, our test consisted of 20 items with statements like, I am satisfied with my university selection of online courses, and participants were expected to indicate how much they agree or disagree with the statement using a 5-point Likert scale ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. A higher score on our test indicates higher satisfaction with online learning, and our reliability was 0.933. Our convergent test was the readiness for e-learning assessment, which had 27 items. An example statement is, I have access to a computer with an internet connection. Similar to ours, participants responded using a 5-point Likert scale to indicate how much they agree, with responses ranging from completely agree or completely disagree to completely agree. And a high score on this test indicates higher readiness for e-learning, and the reliability of this test was 0.95. The discriminant test was the Oxford Happiness Questionnaire, which was 29 items with statements like, I am not particularly optimistic about the future. And participants also responded using a Likert scale, except this one had 6 points, with the responses ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And a higher score on this test indicates higher levels of overall happiness, and the reliability was 0.921. So our results of our study, the main problem with our data was that our sample size was a lot lower than we wanted it to be. We successfully recruited 84 people to take our survey, but we only had 62% people complete our test, 47 complete the convergent test, and 45 complete the discriminant test. So although we had 80 people or 84 people click the link and consent to taking our test, we had a lot of people who didn't complete it. So we had a lot of data that wasn't usable or a lot of missing data, and our sample size was a lot lower than we wanted. But we used Cronbach's alpha for our reliability analysis and Pearson's R correlation for our validity analysis. And here's a table showing the results of our reliability analysis for our scale. And we had a reliability of 0.933 right off the bat, so we did not have to reverse score or remove any of the items on our test. And then here's a table showing the means, standard deviations, and intercorrelations for all of the scales. So the mean score for satisfaction with online learning was 2.9. The mean for readiness for e-learning was 4.12, and the mean for happiness was 4.04. So the mean for our scale was a lot lower than the mean for the convergent and discriminant scales. And the correlation between student satisfaction with online learning and readiness for e-learning was 0.686. And the correlation between student satisfaction with online learning and happiness was 0.346. So overall, our results did support our hypotheses. As stated earlier, we hypothesized that our variable and the convergent variable would be correlated, which they were, and we also hypothesized that our variable and the discriminant variable would have little to no correlation, which is also what we found. It was also interesting that satisfaction with online learning seemed to be low in our sample with a mean of only 2.9. And it was also interesting that satisfaction with online learning seemed to be lower than readiness for e-learning within our sample. So the main strength of our study was that all of our scales had high reliability. And as far as limitations, like I said before, satisfaction with online learning seemed to be lower than readiness for e-learning, which shows that our variables that we used, our convergent variable wasn't as comparable to our variable as it probably could have been. There are probably more comparable tests that we could have used for convergent validity. And also, as previously stated, our sample was pretty small, so it could have been a lot larger to further validate our results. As far as future research, with improving our study, like I said, if our study was replicated, researchers could use a better convergent variable that's more comparable to ours, or use a much larger sample size to like further validate our results. And research as a whole also can just continue to look into satisfaction with online learning. Like I said, within our sample, we found satisfaction with online learning to be low, which is interesting because looking at previous research, satisfaction just seemed to vary a lot. So it's interesting that ours was relatively low. And I think research could also look into how the pandemic affected student satisfaction with online learning and how students' opinions of online learning has changed since the pandemic. And obviously, research can continue to go into how we can improve online learning so that students are learning as much as possible and getting as much out of their education as they can. Here are the references, and thank you.